Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Talk that talk. 2 planes on the runway. 2 destinations. Heaven or hell. They taking off someday. Could be Saturday through Sunday, Monday through Sunday. So get saved before that one day. Listen to that one way show. Yeah.
Welcome to One Way Podcast. I'm your host, Angel Ariola, and today we have Miss Natalie with us, and so she's gonna share her testimony. She's gonna share everything God's been doing in her life recently. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Miss Natalie, you can share how long you've been saved and how you heard about the church.
Okay, so I've been saved since 2012, and I was living at the Sorrento Apartments when I met Blanca. She goes to the same church we do. I met her and she started telling me about God, and she invited me. She gave me $10 for gas, and she invited me to church. And when she gave me money, like, I was used to like using people all the time, and I didn't care, like, I wouldn't think about it twice, but for some reason this woman, she lived in our same apartment complex. So I was like, for some reason I was like, man, I have to go, like I have to go, like she gave me $10, like I have to go. It was weird. So I went and I gave my life to God. But before that, I had already cried out to God. I was living in the east side with my now mother-in-law, and she wasn't too kind to me, because she knew that I was on drugs or something, and so she didn't really want me there. I got my little boy to move in with me, and she didn't like it one bit. So I cried out to God and I said, if you're real, just give me a roof over my head where I can take my kids with me. And not even 2 weeks later, housing called me and they had an apartment for me waiting, and I had already been on the waiting list for like 4 years. Out of nowhere they called me, and I had even forgotten about that. And they told me, you don't have to do nothing. The manager called me from the apartments, and they're like, I have an apartment open for you if you want. And I'm like, how did you even like know that I'm on housing? How did I don't even know how that came about. It was all God. And so I went. She filled out the paperwork for me. She said, take it downtown. I did, and I was approved right away, and I moved in, and not even 5 blocks down, the church was there. So basically, like, God was telling me, now you do your part. So I went to church. I gave my life to God. It was at that point I was still doing drugs, so I continued to do drugs like until a month after I got saved. I would go to church, and then after church I would go all the way to the west side, and I would buy drugs, and I would come home, and it continued for like a whole month, and until God was dealing with me about that. And it's amazing, because before, it's like you don't think twice about things like that, like, and I got saved, and now it's like God's putting it in my heart, and I'm feeling conviction, like I'm feeling so bad about doing drugs, and I'm like, I don't want to go to hell, like I'm playing with God, and and so I was like, God, I need you to help me. Like, every time I would go to service, I felt like staying there, like I wanna sleep here, because it's the only time that I feel like no cravings, no anything. And so, but God kept dealing with me, and sure enough, one day I just got out of church and I went all the way to the west side. I came home with the $20 worth of brown, and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I just flushed it down the toilet. And that's when I knew, like, there's no turning back. Like, I'm all in, it's God's so amazing. I mean, so yeah, that's how I started going to church.
Wow. And so was that before? And so did Miss Blanca knocked on your door or something?
No, actually, we were gonna go ask for gas. Like, we're gonna go ask money off of people, like at the gas station. People would fill up our gas tank, and it was embarrassing. But like, you do whatever you can to get your drugs.
Right.
So I was gonna meet my now husband at the mailbox, and he was gonna pick me up there. So I don't even know why. He's like, he got into the truck, and instead of me getting in the truck with him over here, I told him, I'm gonna go check the mailbox or something. Pick me up over there. So when he went around the apartments and he picked me up over here, there was Blanca coming this way from the bus stop. So we met up at the mailbox.
Mm.
And so she just, I don't know where she was coming from, but at first I was like, oh no, I don't want to talk to her because she had like a long skirt on, and then her daughter was dressed like her, and I was like, oh no, she's a Jehovah Witness. Like, she had this purse
Yeah.
that made her seem like, and then she was reaching in her purse like to get a flyer, I guess, but I saw her. I thought she was a Jehovah Witness, and I was like, "Oh no, here comes this lady," And it's like I didn't know anything about God really. Like, I knew about Him. I didn't know Him.
Right.
So I was like, but I knew that Jehovah Witness was not the good way to go. Like, and so I didn't want to talk to her, but she started telling me about God, and so she brought up a flyer and she told me, that there was a Christian church down the street, and so that's how I ran into her, and we started being friends. Like, we got real close after that.
And so did you already have known her before that? Like, did you ever
No,
see her? It was just at one time.
No, yeah, that's the first time I had ever met her.
Oh.
She just came up to me and started telling me about God.
And so, what made you like open to that? Were you already going through stuff?
Well, it was kind of like all adding up. Like, since I was little, I had a rough start. Like, I was born in San Antonio, but when I was 4 years old, my parents moved us to Lido. So in Lido, it's a very small town. There's really nowhere to go, nowhere to hang around. And we lived in a school bus because my dad was cleaning out the acres that he bought. So my brothers, I guess, were teenagers then, so they were there helping him and stuff. And so he moved in a school bus, and I guess he put up a light or something, light post, and so we had electricity. I don't know how, but I remember we had water and electricity. So, but we would sleep in a bus, and he tore out all the seats, of course, and we would all, sleep there until he got the house built enough, like a big old room, and we would all sleep inside now. So, when the thing is that when there's a lot of siblings and really not enough space in the house, there's going to be violations. And that's how it was with my family. I went through some stuff, and with my dad too, you know. Um, but, so that was that. I had a rough, childhood. Um, and then I was like 17 when I went to Lido school and stuff, and then I was like 17 when I wanted to come to San Antonio. I wanted to leave the house, and my mom told me, you're not gonna leave unless it's gonna be like to go to school, to do something. So I was like, okay, well then I'll go to Career Point. At that time it was like Career Point on TV all the time. So I told her that she talked to a sister of hers or something, and so one of her daughters, my cousin, opened up her home to me here in San Antonio so that I can go to school. So I started going to Career Point. I actually graduated from there. But then that's when I met this guy, which is my kid's father. And after that, it was like kind of all downhill from there. I was with him. I got pregnant for my first kid, and then I left him. When I was pregnant of my son, my sister passed away, and I was really close to her because she was like the last one left at home, and I was the youngest one. So by the time I was in high school, it was basically just me and her because my sisters had already all left, and my brothers mainly were the ones around my mom, and so we grew close, and it really hit me when she passed away. So um, so I was pregnant, and I guess I couldn't, like, I really hit it. It really hit me hard. So when I was staying with the father of my children, his sister told me, um, it'll be okay, and you need to calm down. She's like, here, have a line of this. And so it was some like brown powder, and I was like, okay, well, I'll do that, and it did. It calmed me down, but I was like, oh, I was like vomiting afterwards, and then I felt the high, and I was like mellowed out, and it felt so great. And then it just I completely like blocked everything out. Like it made me block everything out. So then the next day at her rosary or whatever you call it, I did another line, and so then it went on every day line. Well, by the time the funeral came, and I was done with, I woke up and I was like, what's wrong with me? Like my body was hurting, like. And she's like, oh, it's because you need it now. And I'm like, what do you mean I need it? And she's like, yeah, your body is asking for it. Like, she's like, it'll all go away if you just do another one. And at that time, she knew that the kid's father used to work, and he used to give me like all his check because I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't, he would come home and give me all the money, and he was doing weed. So he's like, can I just have a little bit for weed, And I would give him like $50 out of his check. And back then, like $800 was a lot,
Right.
So that's how much he was making. And so she knew that. And so she's like, you want me to go buy it for you? Because my brother can't find out, So I'm like, okay, here. And it was all hiding it. I would give her money, and she was already hooked. She was only like 16, 17, and she was already hooked. And
wow. How old were you at the time?
I was 19, 19. And so she was already hooked because there was no supervision in the house. Her mom was always working, and there was no husband in the house. So her brothers were always partying in the back, drinking, smoking weed. So it was just her, and she was out with guys. And so she would go and bring me the stuff, and we would both do it. And so
all in secret behind it.
Yeah, behind the kid's father's back.
Wow.
So then it wasn't even like a week of doing lines, and I went straight to shooting up. I was like, how can I feel it more? And she's like, well, I shoot it up. And I'm like, okay, well, go buy me a thing, right? Because I was like, I'm not going to share it with you, you know. So I was always careful about that. And that's the thing that I thought that, oh, I'll be fine because I don't share needles, you know. Like, you're wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, so she went and bought me my own thing, and she showed me how to do it, how to shoot up, and then it was from there. I was just doing it by myself, and I already know how to take out blood. Like, I knew, because I went to Career Point for EKG, like phlebotomy, taking out blood. So like, I knew how to, you know, I just didn't know how to cook it and all that. Um, so from there on, I started just hiding it from him. And then when he finally found out, he was like, I had James already, and he was like, you know, you're not gonna do this, you know, you're better than that, whatever. And I told him, you know what, at that time I was already hooked bad. And I told him, if you're not gonna get it for me, because he stopped like all money. Like, he's like, no, I'm not gonna give you the money. I'm like, if you're not gonna give me money, then I'll just go get it from somewhere else. And that's when I knew, like, I could manipulate men, you know, because at that time I was young, I was pretty, and I and I was thinner. Like, I mean, I was not this big, you know. um, so so I knew how to, like, you know what, I knew how to get what I wanted, you know. So he's like, no, don't leave. So he started buying me the stuff, and and then I told him, you know what, I need my own place, because there was like nothing but guys and all. So I wanted my own place, but because I had my own agendas, you know. So he got us an apartment, but it would never last. I would always step out on him because it was never enough for me. Like, once you start doing drugs, there's no, like, cap. Like,
Yeah, no boundaries. You just
no
go.
boundaries.
Right.
You need more and more and more, and you're never happy. You know, you're just trying to block out your pain, and you know, your past.
And
You're trying to block it out, but when the high comes down, it's still there. Your problems are there, and then that problem on top of that. You know, like, so.
hold on, before you go, would you say that's the reason you were doing all that? Because if everything happened when you were a
Of
child,
course,
so
of course, yeah.
you were just trying to block everything.
Yeah.
Right.
So he ended up going to jail for selling, because it wasn't enough for me. He was working, and I'm like, but then now we had an apartment. So now whatever he was working, he had to pay the bills, he had to pay the rent, and it wasn't enough for my drug habit anymore. So when he would go to work, I would step out on him, and I was all high, and then he would come home, and I'm like, well, why don't you have money, you know? And I, knowing that I took it all from him, so he started, you know, selling so that he can have money on top of the rent money and all that. And so he got caught, and he ended up going to jail for like 8 months. And in those 8 months, I didn't wait for him, you know. I didn't wait for him. I moved on, and I started I started doing dates. I started selling my body for drugs, and it was like, I felt like, if my dad can use me that way, like, why not get paid for it? You know what I mean? So I didn't have any, like, self worth or anything. Like, I was just out there. I was bad. So, you know, I started doing that, and all the dangers that come with that. Like, it is crazy out there.
And then the drugs were just taking all that shame away.
Yeah,
so it's like it didn't even matter, right?
And there was a point where I even felt like, man, like, this is the life. Like, you know, like, all these guys want me. Like, they didn't want me. They wanted to use me. You know, like, like if I was ever like stranded or something, and you like, I would try to call one, and oh, I can't, like I'm busy, like, forget you, like, I used you already, whatever, so of course, like I was thinking like, oh, I have it all, I can get money whenever, and then I got like some men that would start like supplying my needs for longer, like, in other words, like I started getting into relationships so that I wouldn't have to be out there in the streets, and it would just last until they would get tired. Like I would just use them up all up until they would get tired of it, and they would tell me it's either me or the drugs, and okay, well, bye. Like I was so much into, I was really hooked bad. So of course they would get tired of me, and or they would get tired of using me too. Like it was, it wasn't like they loved me. It was, we would use each other. So I thought that I was like good because I'm like, well, at least I'm not out there walking the streets. I have I have my regulars, but you're doing the same thing. It's the exact same thing. So then I got with this guy, and I was living at that time. I was living on down Acme on the west side, and at that time, when I had my son, it wasn't long until I gave him to my sister because I couldn't take care of him. So I gave him to my sister, like temporary custody, so that CPS wouldn't take him away.
Right.
And that's another thing. Like, I'm not saying that they enabled me, but I took advantage of them, of that, because I'm like, well, they don't want my kids taken away, so they're good, they're good.
Yeah.
And so then I didn't know, when their dad came out, we were, we would still hook up or whatever. So then I was pregnant of Audrey. I didn't know I was pregnant of Audrey until I was like 4 or 5 months pregnant when I found out. So right after she was born, I was in a coma because they did something to me. They cut me too deep when they were doing a C-section because they couldn't find her heartbeat anymore. So I was gonna give labor, and they couldn't find her heartbeat, so they rushed me to a C-section. They cut me too deep, so I was bleeding out while I was in recovery. And my sister, like, nobody's supposed to go back there when you're in recovery. So my sister snuck her way back there, and she saw that I was like really white, and I'm not white, I'm brown.
Yeah.
So she was like, you were like very pale, and she lifted the sheet, and I was like, it was full of blood, the bed. So they rushed me back. They had to operate on me, and Audrey got to go home. So they let her go home with my oldest sister while I had to stay at the hospital. So then when I came out, I was like, man, like God let me live, like, it was a miracle. But then I came out of the hospital, and I was like, okay, I want to get high, That's the first thing I thought about. And so when I was in the hospital, I was like, I'm going to do better. I want my kids, thinking all that the same way like when you're in jail. So a lot of people find God in jail, and then they get out and they leave God there.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened. And so Audrey went home with my oldest sister. That's how, when I came out, I started doing drugs again. I started doing what I did for drugs, and I left her with my sister. I was like, well, she's good there. And by the time I started like coming around and trying to pick her up, I would really get hurt because she didn't know me anymore. She didn't know who I was. Like, she would cry with me. So when she started getting, like, she was like a toddler, I would pick her up, and she didn't want to come with me, and I would be like mad, and I would like force her to come with me. And it also didn't help that my sister would tell her, like, you know, you're gonna go cuckoo, you know, like trying to scare her so she wouldn't go, because my sister loved her, you know, she loves her. So yeah, I didn't have a relationship with my kids really. And all that time, I started living with this guy, and this guy used to talk to me like, I was used to all these men that I was with. They were like always like trying to get me what I wanted and talking to me all nice, and you know. But then I meet this guy and he talks to me like so ugly, and that's the one I think that I'm in love with. Like,
Wow. Yeah.
like he would like talk to me like if we're friends, like, hey, way, and you know, like stuff like that, and I was like, man, why do I love him so much? And so then he was like, you should appreciate me. You should be glad that I got you off the streets, because he told me you don't have to do that no more. You know, come stay with me at my mom's house. And so we had a room at his mom's house, and I was already like what, 22, 23. I had Audrey when I was in 2004. I was like 21, 22, 20, 22, 23. So, I was with this guy and he was like 48. And so, in order for me not to be out there in the streets like that, what are we going to do? Now, he's hooked too. So, we started stealing. Well, we would go to stores and we would steal. And then we would go and sell it and get our money for drugs. Well, then something came up for him where he would, you know, go make runs for somebody and he would make money like that. And when there was money, it was all good. And when there wasn't any, he was like, go do something, like, you know, like, we don't have nothing, like, you get up off your bed and go do something. And, you know, and so it was always like, okay, I have to have something, because if not, he's gonna get mad, like, you know. But then I would be like, he loves me because he helps me, like, he doesn't leave me alone, like he also gets stuff for us, and he's doing these runs for us, you know. Like, I was my way of thinking was so dumb, like, you know.
Yeah, looking back is like,
Yeah, and so yeah, this he would treat me so ugly, and that's the one that I thought that I really loved, and so I was with him for like 3, 4 years, and then I started, like, he went to prison for crossing drugs. So then after he was in prison, his mom was like, hey, you know, get out, you know, he's not here no more. Like, we would make her life miserable, you know, like, how are you gonna have two drug addicts in your house, you know, like, I mean, now I think about it, I'm like, man, she put up with the lie, you know. It's not like we would go pick on her or make her life miserable on purpose, but we were there, we weren't paying rent, we weren't doing nothing, you know, like, so, um, so when he went to prison, I met the one that's now my husband. I would hang around at a tire shop, and there was guys there all the time. They would hang around there. My husband would hang around there after work. Usually like on Fridays after work, he would go. He would have a beer with them. But I noticed that he was the only one that wouldn't talk to me. And it was me, and then it was like two more girls that would go by, like they were doing the same thing, you know. And all the guys were like wanting to get at us and for free and stuff like that. And I was like, this guy, like something about him, you know, he was there, but he was quiet, not even talking to us, not even interested, right? And I'm like, is he gay or what? And then he would like started like, here, like, you know, go get yourself something to eat, or, you know. And I was like, okay, well, what do you want? And he was like, no, nothing, just go get yourself something to eat. And then one time at that time I was living like way in the east side. So He's like, I live in the east side, right? So if you need a ride home, I can take you, instead of having to take like the last bus over there. And I was like, okay, I guess, and but he never wanted nothing from me, right? So he made me feel like shame, like weird, like I don't know, like convicted or something, right? So he starts telling me in the truck, I go to this church and this and that, and and I started laughing. I was like, what? I'm like, but you drink? And he's like, no, I know, but I go, I go on Sundays, or and if you want to go, he was always trying to invite me to church, and I'm like, no. And then he started telling me like, why don't we give it a try, but I don't want to like that, just try to better yourself, and where are your kids at? You want me to take you to go see them? And so we would pick them up. He would take me to pick them up, and he would take us out because I didn't have no money. So he would pay, and I would take my kids out, and then we would go drop them back off, and like that. And all this time, he didn't want nothing from me. So I felt like weird with him, right? But then I was like, I don't wanna be with you because later on you're gonna throw it in my face, when we fight. And up until now, he has never thrown nothing in my face up until now. So it went on like that for a while until I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll give you a try. I was like, I'll be with you, but if I'm gonna be with you, it's because you're gonna help me get my kids back. And he's like, okay. So then that's what we were working on when my son came to live with us at his mom's house in the east side. But that's when I cried out to God, like, because it wasn't working out. He was about to get us an apartment when they called me from housing because I told him, I gave him an ultimatum. I was like, you know what, either you get us out of here or, you stay with your mom, like, because he's a Mexican. So he was very like mama's boy, you know what I mean? So that's hard. Like when they're mama's boys, it's really hard. So I told him like either you stay with your mom or I'm out. So that's when they called me from housing, and I told him in the middle of the night like he kept procrastinating like, oh, let's clean the apartment first, and oh, well, not this weekend, but next weekend we'll go clean it, and and we'll move in. And all this time, it's like he didn't want to move out of his mom's house. So I got my son, and I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. Either you're with us, or you stay. But don't think that you're gonna go and just have your way with me, and then come back home to mom. So he started getting his stuff too, and his mom didn't like it at all. She was like, she's gonna starve you to death, and she didn't like him. Yeah. Like she cried to him, like she was very upset. But yeah, we ended up moving, and then when I got saved, God started dealing with me like, you're not married, and I'm like, but we live together. We've been living together, like, but in God's eyes, it's like there's no such thing as common law. It's like you're either married. How I started thinking like, how do I want to be blessed? How do I want God to bless my marriage if we're not doing it the right way? So for like 2 weeks, I told him like, it's over. I mean, we can't see each other. We can't live with each other. So that whole time, I'm lying. It wasn't even 2 weeks. It was 1 week, because that whole week he slept outside in his truck, and he would, like at 6 in the morning, I would hear the truck, and he would go to work, and then after work he would come and he would just park there, and he would sleep there, and I was like, oh man, this guy, like, he doesn't leave, right? So then that Friday day he got paid, and he came with the ring, and he's like, come on, let's go get married. And I'm like, okay. And so we got married, and that was that. Like, we started.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Man, that's funny. And so y'all were like 22, 23 at the time?
No. By that time, I was already, that was like in 2012. Yeah, when I cried out to God,
Okay.
it was like 2011, like late 2011. Yeah.
So from when you start, this is like, and all this time you were still doing drugs and all when you met.
Hmm.
Okay. And then that's when you meet Miss Blanca.
Yeah,
Wow,
when we
man.
moved over here.
And then what happened whenever Miss Blanca witnessed you when you started going to church? What was your like? Tell us a little bit after that.
When I first came into church, I was like, okay,
What did your
well,
husband think about the church?
oh, he loved it.
Right.
Like, he loved the fact that I was going, because at first he was like, okay, like, he just wanted me to be straight, like,
Yeah.
to behave, to calm down, like, so when I told him, like, I'm gonna go to church, he's like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go to church. And he's like, okay, I'll go, I'll drop you off. But this whole time he's like, he went with me, but he's like, it's not Spanish. So that's the excuse he used, right? So anyways, when I came in, I was like, man, they're gonna look at me, and they like, I didn't have any clothes, decent clothes. Like, it was all showing cleavage, and I was used to dressing like that. So I came in, and these people were like, hi, like, what's your name? Like, they didn't look at me like if I was trash. They didn't look at me like, oh no, you need to cover up, or, like, and so that made me feel more like convicted, like, oh my God, like, somebody give me a coat or something, like, and they welcomed me with open arms, like, wow. But then I was like, I don't belong here. Like, I am too broken for these people, like, for this place. But then it was like, one lady told me her story, her testimony, another one, and another one. I was like, oh man, these people are jacked up, like, they're really messed up. I was like, I belong here, like, wow, like, everybody has a story. It's not just me, like, we're all alike. And look what God did to them. So I want that. Like, I know I can be there, I know I can get there. So yeah, I mean, they have been a big impact on me. Like, people like Miss Dora, and Miss Maria. Like, Miss Maria was actually, like, really big in my life at one point, like, just giving me advice. And because our kids went to school together, and they were about the same age. So, man, she made a big difference in my life. Like, like, starting off with God. um Everybody just, they're amazing. Like, they don't look down on you. They don't tell you, like, they don't shove it down your throat, like, you have to do this, you have to do that. Like, no, like, it's like they like, they welcome you, and they let God work in you. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they're there to judge you, or they're just there to help you. Like, and I freaked out on that, because I've been to churches before, and I was at a church, like, a long time ago. When I was in my sin, I had gone to visit a church, and the pastor was talking to me, and he was like this, like, I'm up here, like, like, he was a pervert, like, and I was like, oh no, I'm not. I felt nothing at that church. So here I was. When I first started, I couldn't speak to the men, like, I couldn't talk to guys. I would, like, look down, like, I don't know why. Like, I mean, later on I realized why. But so when I started talking to my pastor, it was like, man, this man looks at you, at your face, like, he's actually listening to you, right? And he has so much respect, and and experience, and so I'm like, this is where I want to be. This is where God wants me to be. I felt it. I felt the presence of God there, and it's like, I'm never going back. I there's no reason for me to go back. Like, there's nothing for me out there. Like, it's amazing what God can do.
Wow. Okay, so now you're in church, and then tell us you end up getting your kids, right? This is
Yeah, I got my kids back when my daughter was 8 and my son was 9. So
how was that like? You're already going to church, right?
I'm already going to church. So now I have to deal. Okay, I'm going to church. I have to deal with the fact that God loves me, the fact that I'm worthy of love and respect, and I have to deal with the fact that no matter what, God forgives me. You know, so I dealt with all that, and then I'm still dealing with it, right? Like at that time, I was still dealing with all getting that through my head when I got my kids back. So now I have to deal with them trying to forgive me. And that was tough. That was really tough because my daughter went through a lot. Like, she didn't want me as her mom. Like sorry. She was like okay with me, like being her friend, you know? But when it came to me, like putting boundaries or being her mom, she was like, well, who are you? Where were you? Now you're trying to be my mom, you know? So it was really hard for me to like step back. And then it's really hard to be a mom and like, mind you, like my husband was not like helping me with them. Like his mom put it in his head, like stay away from them. Like they're not your kids. Stay away from them because they can easily say like he did something to me. So he was afraid of that. Like he didn't want nothing to do with punishing my kids or. So it felt like I was a single mom. And so my daughter was the toughest because my son, he wanted me back. He wanted to be there. But then he was also dealing with, you left me, like, and he never had like a father figure in his life. He loved his dad so much. The one that went to prison, he loved him because there was a time where I was supposed to be picking them up and spending time with them, but like I was hooked on drugs. I was just looking for the money. So I would pick them up. I would drop them off with their dad because he's like, let me see my kids. And I'll be like, well, you don't even pay child support. Like, give me money and I'll take them to you. So then I'll go drop them off with their dad. They're saved. They both got married, and they're married to people at church. I mean, godly people. I have a son-in-law and a daughter-in-law, and they're wonderful. I couldn't ask for anything more. So,
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
So tell us a little bit now about just things. Oh, touch up on recently, like your health, right? Share a little bit about that.
So because of my drug use, because I used to shoot up, I got hepatitis. I had gotten hepatitis C. So hepatitis C doesn't really go away. Um, so I went to the Liver Institute and they put me on some medication. The one of the brothers from church, Mr. Rural, he told me about a medication that was out there, and it was like it was at that time it was like a clinical trial thing, so it was free, and so I went and I asked them about the medication, so they approved me and they put me on that medication, and so they told me like we can try it, but at this point like your hepatitis is too advanced and we don't think it's gonna do much, but we can try it. And I'm like, okay, well let's do it, if there's a chance. But So then I started praying and fasting, and God healed me. God healed me from hepatitis. So now I'm going through the.
And so that's the hepatitis is gone.
It's gone. It's
Wow.
gone. So now I'm going through this liver cirrhosis, but I'm at stage 4. And what they told me is that they don't understand how I'm not showing any signs of it. You know, even though the test and everything says that I'm at stage 4, they don't understand how I'm not showing any bleeding inside, or, you know, all the symptoms that come with it.
You're healthier than you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. So I told her, like, I told the doctor as she's, you know, explaining to me, and she's looking at me face to face, and I'm like, well, it's, you know, it's God. You know, I believe that it's God. It's only God. And of course she put her face down and she started writing like she ignored me. But it really is God. He's a healer, and he's a miracle worker, and I believe that with all my heart. Like he has healed me, and he has given me a chance to live so many times. Like, he's been with me for so long. And you know, when I was in my sin too, it was my mom, like, always praying and praying for me. No matter what, she was always praying for me. And that's why I thought I was good, because my mom's praying for me, like I'm good. But no, you have to have your own relationship with God, you know? It's only gonna be for so long, and then, you know, you keep saying no to God, he's gonna take his hand off of you, and okay, go do whatever you want, you know? And so all that time, I know that God was with me, that I was in situations that you wouldn't believe. Like, I could have gotten killed so many times, and I'm here, and I know God had a plan for me, you know, and he still does. So I mean, God's just, he's amazing.
Right. Well, that's cool. That's good to hear, man. Wow. So, what are some things that maybe you want God to do in the church, or in your life, in your marriage, with your kid? What are some things that, or even some things that God's already done in your life, or that you want to see later on in the future?
What I really want, I'm praying for right now, is for my husband to get saved. I want to see him there with me at church. He had gotten saved before. He got baptized, and he loves it. He loves our church. He does. And it's funny because he's not saved, because it's not true that when people say once you're saved you're always saved. No, that's not true. But my husband was saved, and he still talks to people at work about God, but he's not saved. But he was saved at some point. But he blames it on, you know, we're all human. We're not perfect. There's gonna be no church that's perfect.
Right.
You know, so when he was going, something happened where somebody gave him a job and they burned him, you know. So, but that person was not all in for God. That person was, you know. So he blames it on that. He stopped going, and the fact that he couldn't understand because he's Spanish. So because he couldn't understand, he's like, no, well, I need a Spanish church, you know. But I'm praying for him, because I know he's gonna get saved, and I know he's gonna stick to it, you know. And it's frustrating because he's such a good guy. He is awesome. Like, he takes care of me, you know. I used to have a big problem submitting to my husband because I didn't know how to submit to anybody. I was like, it's me, it's my pride, you know, like, I do what I want, you know, I wear the pants in the relationship. And he put up with me for so long. And at first I didn't love him. I didn't know how to love. And I cried out to God too, like, God, I just want to love him the way I'm supposed to love him, you know. And God gave me that. Like, little by little, I just started seeing things in him, like, wow, you know. And then, like, he was at work, and I'm like, I actually miss him, you know, like. And so God gave me that love for him, that, you know, that how you're supposed to love your husband. And it's awesome, because now it's just us two. Like, my kids are gone, they're married, and I was like, what are we gonna do? Like, we don't know each other, like, we don't, you know, like. But it's amazing how God is bringing us closer together. Like, I mean, I love him all over again, you know what I mean? And he's done so much for us, and I thank God for my husband. So God gave me that too, and I thought I would cry, and I would tell Pastor, like, I don't love him, like, what's wrong with me, you know? And so, you know, he would give me advice, and so I would listen to him, and I would realize little by little, you know, I love him again, you know, like. So he's such a good guy. He's always there for me, but unfortunately, like, just by being a good guy, it's not gonna get you to heaven.
Right.
So it's really frustrating. Like, man, you have it. It's just, you need to get saved, you know, because even though you're good, you're not gonna. It's not by works alone. Like, you're not gonna make it to heaven, you know. So that's what I want God to do, is to save my husband. And I want to see, like, the full potential in my son. Like, I don't know, I have a feeling, like, I don't know if it's like hope or what, but maybe one day he'll be an evangelist or something, you know, like.
Right.
So yeah, I pray for that. That's what I want God to do.
Yeah, well, just, like you said, keep praying, because I mean, I've been there similar to my wife, and I want to serve God. So just be faithful, and just keep praying that God would really get a hold of him.
Yeah.
So usually before we leave, I like to tell people to leave a few words of encouragement to anybody who may be watching, who has, you know, similar background to you. What are some few words you'd like to leave somebody who's watching?
I would say, don't think that God doesn't love you because you're broken, or because you've done so much, or you're in your sin too deep. It's like you're putting God in a box. Like, God is so amazing. Just give him a try. What else do you have to lose? Like, if you're anywhere where I've been, and that's like rock bottom, then there's only one way up, you know? So just, I would say, give God a try and see what he can do for you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to give your life to Jesus Christ, just pray this simple prayer with me real quick. Say, Father God, I'm a sinner in need of a Savior. I ask that you forgive me of all my sin. Come into my heart and be my Lord and Savior. I believe you died on the cross and rose the third day. Thank you for forgiving me of all my sin. If you prayed that prayer and you need a church to go to, come in, that number on the bottom of the screen. Come in contact with us, and we'll help you find a local church to go to and start living for God. Thank you.
Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Got 2 lanes on the one way. Heaven or hell coming someday. Talk that talk. 2 planes on the runway. 2 destinations. Heaven or hell. They taking off someday. Could be Saturday through Sunday, Monday through Sunday. So get saved before that one day. Listen to that one way show. Yeah.